Hello everyone and welcome back. It's Gina from orchidandopal.com, and today I am back with another tutorial. This time it's from the materials from the City Chic collection that launched at the beginning of November by Eureka Crystal Beads. If you weren't able to get your hands on one of those, it looks like they do have some of these left in stock, and by picking one up you're not starting a subscription. It's simply a collection of items that go together, coordinating with a specific color scheme and theme, and meant to inspire beaders with a variety of different types of materials that you can put together, some of which you see here, including one of the Crystal Chatons, which we will be bezeling around, in addition to lots of other things that you can find in the collection. And that, by the way, is linked right down below the video, so check that out. And it'll also take you to the page where you can find the entire list of everything that is included. So here's a closer look at the City Glow pendant that we're going to make today. And in addition to the crystal stone, we'll also be using some 2-hole SuperDuo beads, 2x3mm Crystal Rondelles, and also some size 15-0 and 8-0 seed beads. The only thing that didn't come in the collection of items is this black cord. That's something I happen to have already. But I will show you how to create a very simple bail just like that one, and you can slide that on the chain of your choice or any type of stringing material you'd like. For my beading needle, I'll be using a size 11, and my thread is the 6-pound 0.006-inch diameter Fireline, and you're more than welcome to pick up these materials separately. Eureka Crystal Beads also has a ton of different colors if you want to switch that up and do something a little bit different. And you can find the full list of materials and links to everything separately right down below the video as well. But right now, what you can do is thread your beading needle and gather up your materials. And once you do that, we can jump into this tutorial. To begin, let's first pick up 12 of our size 8-0 seed beads. And once you have those on your needle, you can go ahead and pull those down towards the end of your thread, leaving a 4 to 6-inch tail. We'll be weaving that back in a little bit later, and with your needle, which is on this side on the left being the tail side, you're going to go back around through all 12 of those beads again, starting from the tail side. And just hang on to your tail thread and your working thread so the beads don't fall off, and pull both sides, and they're going to start to form into a loop. You just need to sew through the next bead to complete the loop. So again, holding on to your tail thread if you're not using a stop bead. That is what we're starting out with, and we can go ahead and make a half hitch knot right next to the seed bead that we're coming out of, simply by taking our needle, going underneath the thread bridge between those two beads, making a loop, and then taking our needle and going through the loop and pulling it down onto the thread and pulling the tail thread as well. So this is not a really secure large knot. It's just a simple measure to secure the loop of beads that we already have in place, and we can keep going. At this point, we're going to be working in square stitch, and we're going to add another row of 8-0s onto this one. We're going to work one at a time. We'll pick up an 8-0, and then look for the bead that you're coming out of currently. That's the bead you're going to go back into, and you're also going to sew through the next one. When you pull your thread, that's going to pop one of these beads right into place next to the other 8-0, and we're going to do that all the way around. To continue adding more beads though, we need to pick up an 8-0, and this time we're going to sew through the new 8-0 that we just added. Go ahead and pull your thread tight, and then return down in the other direction through the 2 beads below those, plus one more. So that is what we have right now on our loop, and we're going to keep adding one bead at a time all the way around so that we have a new 8-0 attached to each one below it, and then we're going to bring that into its own loop. So once again, we'll pick up an 8-0, sew through the one that we just added, pull your thread tight, and then return in the other direction and sew through the next 2 beads and the third one. All right, so this is what we have after we've added all the beads. Now we can start to bring the loop together. My thread is coming out of this 8/0 right here, and I'm just gonna swing back up through the 8/0 right above it. And then, just keep your tail thread out of the way for now. We'll sew that back in just a second. You can bring these 2 8/0 ends together and just sew directly into the next one that you get to as if the loop were closed. And then you're going to continue to sew through that entire round of beads. That's going to start to tighten up that loop, but we don't want to make it too tight yet. We want to be able to add our stone in there. So we'll just get our thread in place, and then we can always pull on it and tighten it up more around the stone once that's inside. So here we have the part of our bezel that will sit directly around the stone. It's like a little 2-layer cake of 8/0 seed beads stacked on top of each other. Just another way that you can start a bezel. If you want to do something different than, say, a peyote stitch in the round, you can always start with square stitch for something a little bit different. What we'll want to do now is take our stone and upside down, just press it into the center of your beadwork. Getting that to sit kind of like this. You can see it's starting to frame the front on the other side. So now with the stone in place and just trying to keep it centered as best you can while it's still a little loose, just continue to go around that round of beads again with your needle and continue to tighten it up as you go through every few beads around the stone. And make sure that it's sitting snugly in this loop. And then once you've done that, we're going to add in one more little row of 8/0s on the back to protect us from that pointy bit back there, and also just to enclose the back of the pendant. So coming out of one of these 8/0s, again, we're going to do a square stitch formation, picking up an 8/0 and sewing back through that same 8/0. And this time we're also going to sew through the next 2. So we're going to be skipping one as we're adding in square stitch some extra beads, adding an extra 8/0 onto every other one. So I'm picking up another 8/0, and then we'll sew back through the same one plus the next 2. And we're going to do this again 4 more times, picking up an 8/0, sewing back through the 8/0 plus 2 more. And now what we're going to do is return through that first additional 8/0 that we added. I'm coming out of this one here at the moment, but we're going to go back in the other direction. And these 8/0s are going to fold inward towards the center of the back of the stone. So first we'll go through that one. And at this point, you're welcome to just fold those beads over and towards that center point at the back. And you're simply going to sew through all of those and bring them together at the back. Continue on going through the first one as well so that you can bring these into a tighter loop. And now with this, we're going to go around that smaller loop again to really tighten this up. And after that, our stone's going to be pretty securely in place, which is great because then we can continue on with the rest of the tutorial where we're adding some of our additional beads around our center point. So reinforce this back loop a little bit, reinforce the other 2 loops if you feel that you need to. And then to begin the next step, we'll be coming out of one of the 8/0s in the middle section. So just be coming out of one of those and I will meet you back and we will continue on. All right, everyone, and welcome back. So we have the needle coming out now out of this 8/0 on the middle row. And we are going to now pick up 2 of our SuperDuos. Then we'll be skipping the next 8/0 and sewing through the next one. Take a minute just to pop those in place, just like that. And we're going to be adding those all the way around. So in the same manner, pick up 2 more SuperDuos, skip the next 8/0 and sew through the next 8/0 in that same row. And then just take your fingers and move those SuperDuos into place. They'll start to fan out like flower petals, kind of like that. And we have 4 more sections of those to go. And when you get to your last one, you'll go through the 8/0 as normal. Pull those beads into place. And then just take a moment to straighten everything out and pull your thread tight. So that all your SuperDuos are going to be sitting just like this. Once those are in place, we can then sew through the bottom or inner hole of the next 2 SuperDuos. Then pick up an 8/0 and sew through the inner holes of the next 2 SuperDuos. And continue doing that all the way around your piece. And make sure you pull tight after each addition of those 8/0s. And then we'll go through those next 2 SuperDuos and just continue sewing through that section again one more time to reinforce all of these beads. By the way, I forgot to mention it at the start of this step, but I actually went ahead and put a needle on my tail thread and I wove that thread back into the bezel, kind of made it go around towards the back and bottom of the piece, and then just trimmed off the excess. So that is where the tail thread is. You're more than welcome to take care of that whenever you like. And right now we're just going to continue through these next few beads because we really want this section to be snug and act like the foundation that will be strong and hold everything together. And then simply end by coming out of one of the 8/0 seed beads that you had just added in between the SuperDuos. At this point, I'm going to bend these beads back just a little bit, and we're going to take our needle. We can sew back through the 8/0 that is right below the one we're coming out of in the other direction. And then we can weave through the 8-0 that's above that and on the row that is closest to the top of the crystal. At this point, we're going to add in some of our rondelles in the square stitch fashion. So let's pick one of those up and go back through the 8-0 that we're coming out of plus the next two, and just make sure those rondelles are being positioned so that when they're added, they're going to be sitting in between those SuperDuo sections. They're above, but they're still in between. So let's continue on with that and add in 5 more rondelles. Let's pick one up, go back through the bead that we're coming out of, and we'll also go through the next 2 beads. All right, so that's 5 in place. We have 1 more to go. And again, you'll sew through the same seed beads that you did before. This time though, you can step up through the first rondelle that you added, going in the other direction. And we're just going to accent those and frame them out with some of our black 15-0 seed beads. Let's pick up 5. Then sew through the same rondelle that you're coming out of. You end up with these in place like this, but to make them have that little point, what we want to do is go back through the first 2, skip the next seed bead, and then go through the next 2. Hold that in place, and then you can use your needle if you need to, but that central 15-0 is going to pop out just like you see there. Now we're going to follow our thread path, sewing back through that rondelle. Then in the other direction through the next 3 8-0s. And then we'll go up through our next rondelle and do the same thing. We'll pick up 5 seed beads and sew through the same rondelle again. Then sew through the next 2. Skip the one in the middle and sew through the next 2. Make that center one point out a little bit, and then follow your thread path through the beads to get to your next rondelle section. So that's what you have so far. Continue doing that until you have the remaining 4 rondelles framed out with those little peaks. And once you've done that, we'll meet back and continue on with the next steps. All right, so you can see we have some more detail in the center of our flower, and my thread is getting quite short at this point. So I'm going to need to make a 1/2 inch knot right there and start to secure this thread a little bit so that I can start a new one before I run out. And I'm just going to weave this thread back in a ways. I'm not going to worry about making additional knots. It's going to be just fine like that. And I'll trim off the excess. And I'll be starting a new thread that is going to be anchored to the SuperDuo section. I'm just going to go under that thread bridge. This is just one way you can add some thread. I'm going to go under that again, go through the loop, pull that down, And then I can take a needle and sew this tail thread back in at the end of my beadwork, or I can just go ahead and do that. So have a needle on the tail thread, and once again, I'm just gonna weave back in different directions and make sure I follow the thread path so you'll never ever see that. And then I can trim off the excess. And we're ready to go with our brand new length of thread. So if you need to do that, I left that in as an example of how you can add a new thread. And at this point, you want to work your way through your beadwork so that you're coming out of one of your SuperDuos. I'm going to come out of this one that is right before the next one, which happens to be a section where we're going to pick up 3 of our 15-0s, and then we'll sew through the next SuperDuo. In the larger or wider section, that's where we're going to pick up 1 8-0, 2 15-0s, and 1 more 8-0. Sew through the next SuperDuo that you get to, once again, that outer hole, and then just repeat what we already did. So in that smaller section, once again, picking up 3 15-0s, then you'll sew through the next SuperDuo. Here in our wider section, an 8-0, 2 15-0s, and an 8-0, and through the next SuperDuo. And we'll be going around that section again, adding in 1 more seed bead to the peaks of this section and getting those to pop out a little bit more. But for now, we can just get the beads in place. All right, so 3 of our 15-0s through the next SuperDuo, again, outer hole. And you can pop those into place so that they form that little peak with the center sticking out. Keep doing that all the way around your piece, adding in those additional beads. And once you've gotten back to the beginning where we started that step, I'll meet you back and we'll continue on. All right, so once those beads have been added in and you've sewn up to that first section where you had just added those 15-0s, what we're gonna do now is go around that ring of beads again, but do a little something different. We'll go through the first one, skip the second one, go through the third, and then also the next SuperDuo. It just gets that to shrink up and pop out a little bit more, which allows a little extra room in these larger sections, where we're gonna go up through the next 2 seed beads up through that 8-0 and 15-0. Let's pick up another 15-0, sew down through the next one, also the next 8-0 and the next SuperDuo, and pull that into place. Take a moment to position everything how you want it so that they're sticking out like that, and then just keep doing the same thing. So go through that first bead there, and then skip the second and go through the third, and also sew through the next SuperDuo bead. Pull that tight, and then proceed up through the next 8-0 and the next 15-0. Pick up another 15-0, and go down through the next 2 seed beads plus the next SuperDuo. And pull that tightly into place. So I'm going to let you keep going, and I'll meet you back as we get back to that very last section with the 8-0s and 15-0s, because that's where we're going to start to make our bail. So let's bead up to that point and then we'll meet back. All right, so once you're at that last section, we can pick up our 15-0 like we would, go down the next 2 seed beads and the next SuperDuo, and pop that bead into place up there. And then just bending these back so I can see a little bit better. And I'm going to return through that next hole of the SuperDuo, the next 8-0, and I'm going to go through the next SuperDuo, because we're going to be finding our way back to the top of that peak we were just adding to. Now we can step up through the same SuperDuo we're coming out of and continue on through the next 8-0 and those two 15-0s. All right, you can go ahead and pull that tight, and we're going to make a really simple bail using herringbone stitch. So to make the one that you saw in the example, we're going to pick up one of our rondelles, an 8-0, another 8-0, and a rondelle. And once you have these on your needle, you can then return through the 15-0 that you're coming out of. Pull those tight. Then sew up through the rondelle and 8-0 again. Sew down through those next two. Over through the 15-0. And then up through the two beads on the left. And then at this point, we're going to make a strip of herringbone stitch using the 15-0 seed beads. And we're going to do a strip that is 13 beads long. And you're welcome to make that as long or as short as you like. The longer it is, of course, the larger the loop will be if you want to accommodate a larger beaded rope or chain. But the 13 is enough to do a smaller diameter cord or something that is light like we have in the example. So with the two 15-0s, I'm now going to return through that next 8-0 and then sew up through the 8-0 and the 15-0 on the left. I'm going to pick up two 15-0s, sew down the 15-0 on the right, up through the two 15-0s on the left, and make sure to pull tight after each addition. So we'll do one more together, two 15-0s, down through the one on the right, and up through the two on the left, and pull tight. So once again, continue that strip until it is 13 beads in length, keeping that 2 beads wide just like we have, and then we'll meet back and start to put it all together. All right, everyone, so now once you have your herringbone stitch strip like this, we can then start to fold that over. I'm going to fold it towards the back and turn the piece around. We're going to form this into a loop and attach it to our 8-0s and the rondelles. So let's go down through the 8-0 and rondelle on the right. I'm going to pull that back. We'll go up through the rondelle and the 8-0 on the left. Pull tight. And then go up through all of those 15-0s on the left again. And pull this tight as you go. So you can just go a few beads at a time, especially since these are so tiny. Heading back toward the front, this time I'm just going to go down through the 8-0 and up through the 8-0 on the left. And this time sew through the other beads on the side next to it, heading down towards the back. Going down into the 8-0 and the rondelle, pulling everything tight, and it should look like this from the side. Right now, I'm just going to secure my working thread toward the back of the piece, coming out of that rondelle. So I'm just going to go over through that 15-0 again and head down the next few seed beads and down that SuperDuo. I'm just going to weave back through some of these beads. I might make a couple more half hitch knots as I go, and then I can trim off the excess thread and we will have a completed pendant. So just take your time, secure your working thread however you'd like to do that. And once you have, we can meet back and admire our finished pendant. All right, so that is secure. I'm going to trim off my excess thread. You can also use a thread burner and burn that end of thread if you'd like to. And now your pendant is complete and ready to add to your cord or chain or beaded rope. And I think this would look great in so many different colorways. Like I said, this one just happened to come from the materials from the City Chic collection by Eureka Crystal Beads. You can check for the link for that right down below the video, as well as the full list of materials and links to all of those products as well. And I want to thank you all so much for joining me today. It's been great to be back doing another tutorial, the first of lots more to come after this break. It got a little busier than I thought toward the end because we ended up also deciding to move. You all know how that is. So it's been pretty crazy, but all positive things and going in the right direction. So if you decide to make one of these, or if you'd like to make one, I'd love to hear about it. Feel free to leave a comment down below. Also, feel free to give the video a big thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel while you're here. And don't forget you can share the video by using the share button down below with your other beading friends. That's all I have for now, but I hope to see you all again real soon. I hope you have a fabulous rest of your day, and as always, happy beading.